So when dealing with the invoices and receipts or any financial documents, it becomes very hectic and frustrating because of the tough, rigid layout they have. Uh, you know, when I say the tough or rigid, it means they have a lot of tables, they have a lot of handwritten text sometimes, and most of the time they don't look organized. It looks very clumsy when you look at the documents, and they don't follow the standard format because a few financial document has their own standard, and everything will be different when you see. So, in order to get a clearer picture of what you're looking at, especially in terms of financial documents, you always need a better OCR technique. When I say better, it should be the state of art, and also it should provide some sort of advanced parsing capabilities, right? So you need to combine these both to get the relevant information seamlessly. The financial parser feature provided by the Eden AI is perfect for this circumstance. That's what I believe. I'm Krishna, a developer advocate here at Eden AI, and without any delay, let's get started and see how the financial parser API works. So I'll try to cover almost every use case, how to implement financial parser API into your own projects as well, and we'll go through the documentation and see some parameters, how you're gonna implement those params in your code snippet as well. So yeah, let's get started. First things first. So when you go to the home page, you can see AI APIs. That's where you can find all the APIs available. Uh, just search for the financial parser. This is the one we are looking for. Just click on this, and yeah, this is the page dedicated to the financial parser, right? So what can you see here? You can see a quick code snippet written in Python and JavaScript. I mean, if your environment is again Django or Fast API, you can use this code snippet for your project. And then if it is Node.js based, then JavaScript code snippet is for you. It's pretty straightforward. And you can see there are two uh, subsections. If you see file URL and local file, it's let's say your input is basically URL based. When your document is hosted online in some cloud or any of the provider like S3 or Google Drive or something, then you can use the file URL option. Or if it is a binary file located in your local directories or drives, you can use the local file code snippet. This is for the ease of view, basically. I mean, it's pretty simple if you just read the code. I mean, it's straightforward. So you can just take this code and use it in the project, and it'll work. So I'll come to that part in a bit. Let's understand what exactly is there in this document. And on your right, you can see the pricing and also the billing unit. And we have a lot of providers, starting from OpenAI's GPT 4.0 Mini, 3.5 Turbo, etc., etc., Affinda, Extracta, etc., etc. We have a lot. Um, so yeah, and if you scroll down, you can see a live testing part where you can just test your uh, you know the receipt or the invoice you have, the financial document you have, right? And you can select the providers. So just a quick example I can show you. Let me select a sample file I've downloaded. uh, this is a sample file I've downloaded. Let me just add it. Okay. And then instead of all providers, I just want to use something, probably Affinda. I'll just take Affinda, and the document type is, yes, it's an invoice, right? And then I'll just click launch. It may take some seconds. Yep. So it is success. And if you click on the visual, you can see the exact information you got: customer information, merchant, payment, local. the item lines. So this is the item lines you have. Yeah, so everything is like perfect, right? So this is where you can test and see which provider is like suitable for you. Sometimes you may have to choose, for example, verify. Verify is for uh, receipt type of the document, and yeah, something like that. So you can choose your providers, and you can go ahead with this. Okay, let's go to the parameters. What are the parameters do we have, right? Let's start with the settings. So basically, it's a dictionary, to specify which models you want to use, right? So basically, Google, IBM, OpenAI, these are all the providers, right? And OpenAI has 3.5 Turbo, GPT-4o, something like. So these are all the models. So you have to specify these models in the settings, right? So it's the default is an empty object, so it'll choose some uh, default ones. You don't need to specify. And let's go to the providers. Providers are, as I mentioned before, OpenAI, Google, IBM. All of these are the providers. Okay, so what are the fallback providers? I mean, this is a very important thing to consider. Let's say if a provider fails due to some of the issues, like for example, timeout issue, or some sort of issue facing. So if the provider fails, then we need a plan B, right? We need a backup provider. So that's basically the fallback provider. So if only the main provider fails, then the backup provider comes into play, right? Uh, so it basically tries providers in order until one succeeds, right? It's one after the another. It's kind of a how can I say? It's a systematic synchronizing way. So one after the another. It basically doesn't work with the async features, that's for sure. And for example, if the main provider Amazon fails and the fallbacks are Microsoft or Google or something, it tries to get the Microsoft as their primary provider, and let's say if that fails again, it goes to Google and so on. The max you can give is like five fallback providers. So yeah, okay, and then the response as a dict. So basically, it is set to true. Uh, I mean, the response basically is an object, right? With the provider names as the keys. So that's it. So if you keep it to false, then it's basically providing you a list instead of the object. It provides you with a list. And then if you see the attributes as a list, it's also the same thing, self-explanatory. It says it returns the items as a list of objects, right? But with different attributes. But when it is true, it basically returns with each attribute as a list, right? So that's how it works. And then yeah, show base 64. It's basically default is true. It basically controls whether to include base 64 encoded data in the response or not. So yeah, it's the default is true, but you can change it to false. And yeah, the show original response, it's basically default to false, because the original response may have a lot of raw data, so we may not need all the raw response. So it's basically default to false, but you can make it to true and see if you want the raw data or not, right? It is actually useful for debugging or accessing more provider specific data. And yeah, the file, I think it's again it's self-explanatory. It basically is a it's like a binary file upload, and then file URL is basically the URL of the file, which probably is in your cloud or somewhere else, right? You cannot use it simultaneously, by the way. And the file password, yeah, if you are passing, if your input is a file and it has some password, you can use this attribute to provide the password, right? And yeah, the language is basically default to English. It's basically the language code of the document. So for example, for French it is FR, and Spanish it's ES, something like that. And finally, the document type. It's basically the type of document to be processed, right? So there are like three options, as you mentioned, it is mentioned here. It's basically auto detect for automatic detection. Invoice is for like invoice, and receipt is for receipts. Uh, so if you're confused, if you don't know if it's an invoice or a receipt, you can just select the auto detect. And finally, the convert to PDF option. It's basically whether to convert the doc files to PDF format or not. Uh, so it basically helps the compatibility with the providers that only accepts the PDFs, right? So these are all the parameters we have for the financial parser. So let's look at the the code snippet we had before. Yeah, the kind of the API, if you remember, in action now. And yeah, let's go. This is a small project that I've made using Fast API. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, I have imported all the necessary libraries and then added the middleware. And then I took this. This is very important. This is the API. I took this, and then we have a token, right? The API key, basically. So everything you can take everything from the code snippet you have there on the page. Everything is available on there, so you don't need to worry. And then I have created a method. I mean, an endpoint here. So it's basically pass financial file, and then these are all the parameters if you remember. So most of them I kept it the default ones as such, and then and some of them, like for example, I know it's an invoice, so I kept it as an invoice document type. Language I gave it English, and then these are the providers that I gave: Amazon, Pay64, Microsoft, and Mindy. And then yeah, so this is pretty much straightforward. And yeah, this is the payload, right? The final payload, right? And then I gave the headers, everything is there from the code snippet, again I'm telling. So I just took that, snatched it, and used it here. That's it. And then there's no file password, nothing. So yeah, that's it. And I ran the server, right? So it's running on the local host here. So let's test this, how it's working. Let's test using the postman we have, right? Okay, so this is a post method, and this is the endpoint, local endpoint I created. And then I'm passing the file here. It's a sample invoice. I just hit send. Yeah. So finally we got the response, and yeah, you can see. Basically, it's a sample, so there's no name as such. And then the name is your company. Everything is like uh, amount due, right? Everything is on point, right? The client is on 34. So it's a very sample. So, and it worked, by the way. So this is how you basically uh, use the financial parser API into your own projects. It's pretty simple and interesting. So if you understood something from this, if you learned something from this, and if you liked it, thank you so much, and I'll see you again.